What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some Destiny 2 news, and it's Thursday, so we've got this week at Bungie. And in the TWAB today they speak about Master King's Fall, we're going to be getting that shortly. They also preview the upcoming hotfix for Destiny 2, talk about game security, and then we're going to cover some recent adjustments to the game. Bungie also talk about matchmaking in the Crucible, as well as quitter penalties. And there are a few other things which we'll cover from the TWAB in the video. So as always guys, I hope you enjoy this one and find it useful, but without further delay, let's get into it. Cool thing to point out here, but we're going to get the master version of King's Fall, and Bungie say the Epic Raid team has been working hard on upping the ante a bit. Anyone looking to fire team up for a master King's Fall should prepare for Oryx to go Super Saiyan on September 20th, 2022, and that'll be next Tuesday at the weekly reset. And they say we're sweetening the pot with new challenges, and so for normal mode challenges, they'll reward double loot for the encounter when the challenge is active. And for Master, encounters will reward stat-focused armor, then challenges will reward adept weapons, which are actually going to come in the form of harrowed King's Fall weapons. It'll be interesting to see what they're about. And finally, they say all encounters are set at power level 1600, and the powerful cap is plus 30. And, like any Master level piece of endgame content, Master King's Fall will be hard. Like really hard, apparently, but not impossible, so fire team up, make sure to communicate, and don't forget the most important thing. They say Oryx spawns in the back. Of course, there was an argument about whether Oryx's position in the back of the room was actually the back of the room or the front of the room. Let us know what you think. Either way, Master King's Fall dropping next week, and that should be pretty exciting. Something to touch on here separate from the TWAB for just a moment, but we covered the recent hotfix to the game a couple of days back, and when Bungie posted the patch notes for that initially, they actually missed one, and that included a nerf to the Loreley Splendor Titan Helm. And that's been adjusted to grant ×1 restoration instead of ×2. I'm sure plenty of you guys knew about that already, but since we covered it the other day, it's worth clarifying. And what did we expect? Loreley's is still incredibly strong right now. Opinions aside, I'm not really surprised that Bungie nerfed it, so let us know what you think down below. There was another hotfix for the game today as well, but the patch notes were incredibly short, and Bungie say it was player investment data sustainability, localization, and performance updates. And so unless they add any new patch notes to that later on, it shouldn't have touched any loot or activities and things like that in the game. There'll also be another hotfix next week, so September 20th, we'll get hotfix 6205, and that'll drop at 10 AM Pacific, which is the normal reset time. I'll keep you posted on changes in that update. Bungie do touch on a couple of things about PvP in a moment, but they say from the Bungie product security team, the mission is to protect players from cheating and enable players to experience the game as its talented designers intended. And we want to prevent cheaters from being able to ruin the experience for legitimate players, whether that be directly in PvP or indirectly via boosting and making burner accounts and bringing them into endgame content like trials. The success of BattleEye has allowed us to focus on new data science, machine learning, and analysis tools, and some of the first detections went into limited deployment earlier this week, and we've moved some into full production, with others coming later this year. But after building the model, we carefully tracked and accounted for the changes introduced by each game release, analysed known bugs for likely impact, and assessed sandbox changes. And we did this to minimize the risk of false positives. Beyond these initial precautions, we set very generous thresholds so that no one would be banned for having cosmic rays strike their computer and flip an errant bit. And after all of that, if there were any borderline cases, we used some signatures that indicate the presence of certain cheats on the user's computer. This resulted in one of the largest ban waves in our history. And some accounts that were banned have said they don't remember cheating, and when we investigate these cases, we often find that they've given accounts to someone else to play the game for them. And we again remind everyone that you must protect your account and do not use account recovery services. Saying that your fingers were not on the keyboard when the cheating occurred will not be considered during an appeal. So strong position there from Bungie, and another series of updates to game security, so a bunch more folks have been banned recently because of that. And next, Bungie talk about Iron Banner and some Crucible matchmaking changes. And looking back to Iron Banner Eruption, they say we're seeing a consistent number of players across all days, and even an increase on the weekend, and the number of hours played per player over each subsequent day of the week continues to increase. We like to interpret this as generally favourable feedback regarding the game mode, as well as the Iron Banner ritual, and we're glad to see that this is resonating with a large demographic of players, and we're hopeful that we're on the right track towards accomplishing our goals. That said, we are aware of a bug in Iron Banner where shutdown points are being awarded for each damaged participant. This isn't intended and is causing larger swings in team scores than we want, so we're actively investigating the issue and are looking to get it fixed for the second week. And of course, that'll be the second Iron Banner of the season. And then they talk about matchmaking changes in Control, as well as quitter penalties. And they say on average, matchmaking times for Control have only increased about 10 to 15 seconds. And we're glad that we've not increased matchmaking times for the majority of players. But for players on either extreme of the skill curve, their matchmaking times have either doubled or more than doubled. High and low skill players naturally have fewer opponents at their level. As such, we adjusted our configurations so that matchmaking expands to a wider range of skill sooner, thereby finding a match sooner for those players. We don't expect this to affect the Control experience for most players in the middle of the pack, and we hope it broadens the available pool of Guardians for our high and low skilled players to match with. Then in terms of latency, they say, while we expect above changes to reduce matchmaking times, we were also comfortable tuning the knobs to prioritize latency a bit more. We realized our initial numbers allowed for higher latency connections than necessary, and we made a change to restrict latency for longer before expanding the allowable latency threshold. This change sacrifices some matchmaking time for the sake of better quality matches. And the overall effect is players matching in under a minute should see no change in the skill of player or connection quality, but players that take longer for a minute to match should see an increased connection quality but a slightly wider skill selection of players. They also say we're aware that there's been an increase in quit rates for certain lobbies, whether due to connection quality or the skill of opponents matched, particularly high skill players, and while we hope that the above changes alleviate the quitting issue, we'd like to actively discourage quitting as it can negatively impact the remaining players. And as such, we've added Control to the list of activities that can trigger the Crucible suspension system. And they say note that suspension timers for Control are temporarily shared with competitive playlists, but we're actively working on separating the suspension timer for those two different modes. So quitter penalties are now active in Control, although we should bear in mind Bungie Help have recently said with background maintenance being performed all week, we're disabling quitter penalties in the Crucible and Gambit due to an unexpected elevated rise in disconnects. When maintenance completes, we'll re-enable quitter penalties, and the ETA for that is September 17th at 10 AM PDT. And so bear in mind they're not necessarily live now, but finally here Bungie say in the interest of transparency, we'd like to share the current map selections for Control, and the specific weightings right here. So increased weighting includes Disjunction and Cathedral of Dusk, meaning there's a better chance of getting those. Then full weighting includes Fragment, Twilight Gap, as well as Rusted Lands, Distant Shore, Endless Vale, The Fortress, Radiant Cliffs, Pacifica, Altar of Flame, Javelin 4, Widow's Court, Vostok, and Eternity. And then with reduced weighting, we've got Bannerfall, Midtown, Exodus Blue, Wormhaven, and Burnout. And significantly reduced weighting includes the Dead Cliffs, with Anomaly, the Cauldron, and Convergence being removed. They say in the patch that goes live on September 15th, we've lowered the weighting of Disjunction and Cathedral of Dusk from increased weighting to full weighting. I'm not sure if that's actually gone live today because it wasn't in the patch notes. If it hasn't gone live today, then presumably it will be in the next hotfix next week. A little bit of patch note confusion going on at the minute. But for today, guys, those are the core things to cover from the TWAB. As always, I'll link the full article down below if you want to check it out, but I appreciate you tuning in and watching the video today. Give us any thoughts you have on what Bungie have spoken about. And if you've enjoyed the video, a rating below really does help us out on the channel. Otherwise though, for now, thank you for tuning in, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.